Hello and welcome to Pat O'Keefe's World of Curiosities. And tonight we have our very special feature, which we do twice a month, and that is Zeea and Pat's Witchy Wisdom. Zeea, what do we have on the docket tonight?
Well, hey everybody, thank you for tuning in. So we're going to be talking about one of our other most favorite subjects is ghosts, or let me show you my shirt here. My friend Amy gave me this. Boogers, witches, and haints. So
Well, that's
mainly,
appropriate.
yeah, I like to wear this on the ghost tour too, but yeah, mainly we're going to be talking about the haints part. Haints comes from, I guess, the word haunt, so that just means ghost. Booger, is a monster, usually hairy monster, maybe humanoid, but a haint is obviously something non corporeal, a ghost. And witches, we know what that is. We talk about that all the time. We're going to be talking about some ghost stories, Appalachian ghost stories specifically. It's one of our specialties. But yeah, what do you want to start with? You go ahead with yours first. Hey, is there some people on there? Hey,
Yeah,
people.
we're getting we've got Star and she's saying hi, beautiful ladies. Thank you, Star, for watching with us, and we appreciate you and hope you join us for the entire show. Yeah, tonight we've got something I think is exciting. We're talking about Appalachian ghosts, like Zia said. And after we talk about a few ghost stories that some of them known, some of them not well known, then we're going to talk about ghosts in general. So that's exciting. But we're going to start out with one that's well known, and that is the Bell Witch. And the Bell Witch occurred from 18, this whole episode occurred from 1817 to 1820, and it's considered America's oldest ghost story, or first ghost story, which is really amazing. And this witch, as they said, but she was never really a witch, although I think one of the genesis of that name was that the family felt and other people felt that they had been hexed, if you will, by a witch. In fact, John Bell Sr. was quite the businessman, and he would cheat people. I mean, that's one of the stories that heard. And so supposedly he took advantage of a family by the name of Batts, Batts, and Kate Batts was thought to have magical ability. And soon after they were cheated, this particular family, then the assaults started on the Bell family, particularly John Bell Sr., the perpetrator of that bad business deal with the Batts family, and poor little Betsy Bell, which was, she was just a young girl, a young lady, and she really had some of the brunt of this. And this went on for 3 years. And what's fascinating about this, not only was it the first American ghost story, but it is one of the only ghost stories that ended up in death. And we'll get to that later. In between, we are having all kinds of phenomena. I mean, beyond the scope of 99.999% of ghosts and, ghost stories that you may hear. This witch, and we do call her a she because she had a female voice, she would have complete conversations with people. And she would quote from the Bible. She really liked Lucy Bell, who was the wife of John Bell. It was like she had a soft spot in her heart. And Lucy never, ever, during this whole episode of, radical haunting, was she ever harmed by the Bell Witch. And I just say that really the Bell Ghost, the Bell entity, we really don't know what this is. Because not only would she have full conversations, she would quote the Bible, and she would also shapeshift. She was known to have taken the physical being of a dog, of a wolf, and strangely of a being that was half dog and half rabbit, I believe. I believe the head was supposed to have been a rabbit head. She was particularly cruel to the help that they had on their land, and she just made her distaste, if you will, especially of John Bell Sr., well known, and so she tormented these people. I mean, physical bruises would appear on their bodies, especially poor little Betsy. Scratches. Um, she would whisper. They would hear whispering. It was constant. It was like a bombardment of spiritual energy. And what's really interesting is I wanted to see if others had come up, if you will, with ideas as to why this was happening. Well, the first, of course, is John Bell Sr. having cheated, if you will, the Batts family, and so someone with magical ability had cast a curse. That's one. But some of the scientists that you will read, their take on it. One was that there was poison, and that is arsenic that they were all having ingested, and it may have caused things like
Yeah.
auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, right? And what's really interesting there is that John Bell Sr., the day he died, and by the way, he died of arsenic poisoning, and the day he died, the Bell Witch verbally took credit for poisoning John. And from then on out, that was it. It was like no other contact was made after that, after his death. So whatever beef, if you will, this ghost had with the Bell family was completed on the day that John Bell Sr. died.
And didn't the ghost say something like, I'll be back in 25 years to haunt the next people or something like that?
Yes, unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. That sounds like someone like us, isn't it? That did not come to pass because there are people that were waiting for that to happen. I don't remember the exact date, how many years in the future, but yes, that was supposed to have happened. I thought it was further than that.
Something.
I want to mention Linda says that happened not far from her home. It is Adams, Tennessee, and if you don't
Wow.
know where that's at, yeah, we're still talking Southern Appalachian. This is probably the best known
Yes.
Southern Appalachian story. It's
Yes.
been told and retold, and I have been at that property. It's absolutely beautiful. It does, and I've been in the Bell Cave, and it's somewhere I had always wanted to go because it was one of my mother's favorite ghost stories, and I'd
Yes.
heard it over and over growing up in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. And so it was a pleasure to be there. And there is a vibe for those of you that may have been there. I'd love to hear your take in the comments. So let us know.
Yeah, and you're saying, talking about the cave, so it felt weird in there?
Yeah, it definitely has a vibe. I mean, I wasn't uncomfortable because there were so many other people around, and even if they weren't, I would have felt pretty comfortable. But you can tell that there's an energy on this property. Now, whether or not it's active, that's something altogether. And I will tell you, one of the theories about the Bell Witch is that it was a poltergeist that started. And for those of you that know about poltergeist, that simply means noisy ghost in German. And they tend to be noisy. They can move around things. They tend to be, manifest through the physical quite a bit, like moving things, right? Opening doors and
Mhm.
closing them. And one of the theories is that all of the turmoil that was going on in Betsy's family, because let me tell you, because of this haunting, poor little Betsy Bell, who was supposed to be married, that fell apart. He withdrew. His name was George somebody, but anyway, he withdrew his a proposal of marriage, and she wasn't able to marry George, which is really sad. She suffered
Yeah.
greatly because of this haunting.
Something else that I thought of, didn't Thomas Jefferson or somebody like that go there to try to check it out and then they got freaked out and left?
I I didn't read that. I will tell you it was 1817, so it may have been after Thomas Jefferson, but I
Somebody like
remember
that.
there was somebody that was going to visit, and I can come up with that in just a second, but who wanted to visit the farm, and I think that they did. And I think that you're right, on their way in something had happened that had spooked the horses and spooked them. So a fascinating story for those of you that haven't, read anything about this. I definitely delve
Yeah,
into it.
there's
Hmm.
a lot to it, like she said. I mean, I've seen several. different like documentaries on it. So definitely look into that and read a book about it too, because it's wild and it's cool because it is a place you can go to. The house is a replica though, I think, right? Not the
Uh,
same exact house, but it's in the same, I guess, place.
Well, it may be, in the same exact location with, I'm sure it has had to have had some renovations done over the years. This was early, 19th century.
But,
I will say, Kelly Brewer, thank you for being with us. She's saying that my mom is from Eastern Kentucky, and she talks about a local haint. Everyone I have asked haven't heard of him. His name is Old Paul Kendall. Well, Kelly, that's something for us to research. And here's the fascinating thing about the Appalachians. I swear to you, we have ghosts on every corner. We
yeah,
have small town stories that have yet to be written down. And I really hope someone does that, because we're losing these stories with each generation. We begin to lose our old haint
yeah.
stories unless
That's
they keep showing up.
Yeah. That's why I like being somebody that people come to, like, oh, Zia might know about that. And so that's why I like doing a ghost tour, because you keep that oral tradition of storytelling alive.
Let me say something real quick, Scott. I got to respond to
Go
Scott.
ahead.
Scott, I love you to death, and I know that you've been through a lot with the loss of Shelley. It was Shelley. Shelley was the reason. Shelley and Scott was the reason that I did go to the Bell Witch Cave and property. I had went with them, and it was such a pleasure to share that experience with you, Scott, and with Shelley. I love you too, Scott.
Um, but yeah, we got to keep these stories alive. And anytime I'm like at a party or something and there's a campfire, I usually try to break a story out. you know. But
And,
yeah,
and I will tell you, I want to comment, Shining Star Mystic, you are
uh,
exactly right. Everywhere is haunted, especially in the mountains. It is my pleasure, Scott, always.
um, I was gonna say the thing. What was we saying? What I say right before that?
Well, I know that you're gonna, that's okay. I know that you were gonna go into a
Yeah.
really popular story,
Yeah.
which I find fascinating. So go with that one.
Yeah, so I've just always found the Brown Mountain Lights to be such a fascinating subject. That's probably another one of the most well-known haunted things in the Appalachians. Well, was this what I was gonna say? Now, I would definitely classify the Bell Witch as a haint. It's like something that you were being haunted and kind of tormented by. There's other things that would classify as that too, but yeah, this one's kind of not necessarily, well, it's a haint, it's a ghost, but it's not something that's like tormenting you. But it's just there's so many different, stories attached to this, different legends attached to the Brown Mountain Lights. So this is in the Linville area. Yeah, have y'all heard of that? The watchers right now, let us know. And I always like to bring it up on the ghost tour because there is usually people that's been there and seen these lights. So what it is there's the brown mountain that you're looking at, okay? And there's these lights that appears and goes out within the mountain range, but then also above the mountain range, like going up into the sky. Maybe someone would say sort of like a firework, but not like, just kind of like little balls of light, or sometimes they'll dart around and everything. And, but, people have tried to say, oh, this is just, swamp gases, or try to give it some kind of natural explanation. Maybe it's ball lightning, but, why is this happening so much? And this had people had observed this phenomena, before there was even any like trains, or the times of trains or even cars, and they could see those lights going along the mountainside, and then above it, and people would say maybe it's just a reflection of the lights of the cars going around the mountain. No, it's something like this. That's really, you're like, what is that? It even looks like maybe UFO phenomenon. But yeah, like I said, there's different ghost stories that's attached to it. So we have like, there's one where it's like maybe there was warring indigenous tribes and something to do with that, and that's why you would see like these kind of torch lights along the mountainside. And then there was other stories of like a lost slave looking for his master or something like that, or the other way around, and maybe some like unrequited love story there as well. And then there's other stuff that I've recently discovered that was attached to this area as well. So you guys will have to look into that more because it's really a big story. But when I do talk about it these days, it's usually in relation to UFOs, flying saucers, UAPs, whatever they're calling them now. And in that area, like Mitchell County, Linville area is the number one place in North Carolina for UFO activity. And some people say it's because of the very clear quartz that can be mined there and that they're wanting that for their space technologies, the aliens, or what have you. So yeah, that's usually kind of going to sort of talking about UFOs when I talk about that. But it's crazy how many people, well, I have met more than a handful of people that's seen these lights and they describe it pretty much the same way. And then, yeah, these lights are above the mountain and they're, like an orb of light. And they're like, somebody said there's one here and one here. And then they kind of just like went together and was pulsating. And I was like, that's pretty crazy. So I've never actually gotten the chance to go there and look for them, but I am going to go soon. And hopefully I will be able to see them. And it'll be a few days after a full moon. Maybe that'll add to it and not mess it up. But yeah, no one quite knows what it is. They have different theories, and they say it does tend to happen more like in fall time when there's like after a rain. So then that makes you think maybe it's some kind of natural phenomenon. But I don't know. It's pretty wild, and people have filmed it like over time lapse. They've got maybe a one or two videos of it. But it's been, observed for quite a long time and is still a mystery.
And there's a lot of mysteries in these mountains. One of the ones that speaks to me is the Greenbrier Ghost. And for those of you that do not know this story, my uncle actually married into the Shue family, which is really interesting because it was the Shue family that had this experience. And one of the ladies, the one that had passed, in fact, it's this beautiful lady right here. This is her story. Now, she had married a handsome man, and he was a blacksmith. His name was Erasmus Stribling Trout Shue. Oh, yeah. But now, Mama didn't like this man because he had quite the history with ladies, including 2 ex-wives. Now, imagine that during the time, 1897, having 2, not 1, but 2 ex-wives. Now, one of them divorced him because he had ran away and basically just left them destitute. And so she divorced him. But now the second one, supposedly he was working on the house and dropped a brick on her head. I kid you not. And she died. So her mama, Zora's mama, Elva Zona Hessler, and nay Shue, because she did marry him. But her mama didn't like him. And a few years into the marriage, all of a sudden, she's dead. Now, what's really sad about this is that she was buried in the same dress that she was married in. And it was something quite like this. It was a high neck dress. Well, Mama started having dreams in which Zona came to her and said, Mama, I was murdered. And she even showed her how she was murdered. So armed with this, she went and she said, I want somebody to look into this because she had this, right after she died. The woman had not been buried yet. And so they supposedly undid the top part of the dress, and sure enough, she had been strangled to death. Now, this, of course, happened, after the burial and all of that. But she went to court, or they went to court, and her testimony is considered the first time that a ghost's words, if you will, or their story was used in trial. And she was indeed murdered. I mean, she was strangled. Everybody knew it. Everybody suspected him. And so, it came to pass that is what happened. And it was really suspicious that he'd already had 2 wives, one of which had passed because he had dropped a brick on her head. Yeah, but he was supposed to be a very, very handsome man and had really taken her heart. So that is a picture of Zona. And then this is the house where supposedly the murder took place.
Yeah,
And
where'd
as
you
I,
say this was?
I'm sorry,
Where'd you say it was at?
it was in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. So
Okay.
that's why they call her the Greenbrier Ghost. We always call her the Pocahontas Ghost. I have no idea why. It's just something locals said. But we would call her the Pocahontas Ghost. It may have been where many of her forebears, lived at that point. But yeah, we called her the Pocahontas Ghost, but it was actually, yes, the Greenbrier Ghost.
So that last one I was talking about, that's in North Carolina. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, Mitchell County, North Carolina. Had anybody commented anything?
Well, not yet. We've
Okay.
got, in fact, can you see them right here?
They're
Yeah, if
really
anybody.
small on mine. I have to do
Oh,
that.
oh, that's right. I keep forgetting. We gotta get. Yeah,
Creep.
we gotta get you on a laptop so you can see.
Yeah, need a better camera on my laptop. But yeah, there's so many things we could talk about. We could even do another part of this series. There's some other, like, there's some Cherokee legends and stuff. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there was something else you had. I think you were going to talk about, weren't you?
Well, as you said, there's so many stories
Yeah,
in Pocahontas County. We talked about the Pocahontas. I grew up at the foot of this, what we call Pocahontas Mountain, but it was really Droop Mountain. And there was a battlefield at the top of Droop. It's now just I guess a state park. And in 1920, there were some people that had camped out there. And at the time, he looked up and he saw a headless ghost of a soldier. And there was something about that moment because after that, more people talked or had that experience of encountering soldiers who had died on that battlefield. Now, it was not a major skirmish, but there were 400 soldiers that died on the top of that mountain during the Civil War. So it definitely left its mark. Then
yeah,
there's a state park called Beartown right out from that. And that is one of the most beautiful parks you'll ever walk through until dark. When it starts to get dark, it's a very uncomfortable feeling. And this is, it's actually written up. If you want to go out and look this up, so many people have this experience, including myself, who, I've walked those paths many, many times. And it's almost like there's elementals that come out, like the fae or the fairies come out, or some sort of energy.
yeah.
It's not really a haunting, but it gives you that feeling of having, those eyes on you
Now
and being watched.
that might classify as a booger.
Yeah, that may,
But
absolutely.
we
And
were
then,
saying, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, that's okay. Uh, I just wanted to say one more thing, one more story. This happened when my sister and I were small, and well, we weren't that small. I was about 14, I guess, maybe 13. My sister was a little younger. And we were at Denmark State Hospital. At one time, it was a tuberculosis hospital for African Americans, and it had been made into kind of a rest home for old people. And so we were there with my grandma, and it was so funny. She actually lived on the premises. They had these little one-bedroom apartments, like across from the hospital. And I don't know, we just had to run the hospital. And so we were on the elevator with a couple of doctor's kids, and we went down to the morgue. And I will never forget it. We're standing there with these two kids, and I consider myself pretty weird. I mean, as far as compared to most people, and especially at that age. But we sit there and we watched one of the doctor's kids open, where you put the bodies, and they had ice in there, and he like picked the ice out and stuck one in his mouth. And so we're like, oh, we got to go. This isn't weird. This is just disgusting. So,
Oh my God,
I'm telling you. So my sister and I are like standing there staring, and we're cutting relations with these kids right now.
no
So,
kidding.
so we got back on the elevator. And when we did, this doctor walked past us. He was a smallish kind of black doctor. And he had a stethoscope around his neck, and he had a pad and a pen, and he was doing this, and he looked up, and we smiled at him. He smiled back, and he went back to work. So we got off the elevator, and we told our granny, we met that nice black doctor on the elevator. And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "The nice black doctor," and described him. And she told me, she said, "Pat," she said, "there's no black doctors that work at this hospital." You got to remember it's West Virginia, 19 probably 60s at that point. So here's the funny thing. Not too long ago, I was out on the internet, and I saw a story about they were doing renovations because now it's a prison, right? It went from old folks home to prison now. So it's a prison. They were doing all these renovations, and worker after worker, construction worker, described seeing a black doctor
Wow.
on the elevator.
Mm,
Yes. And so you love it when you see that, because even though my sister was with me and she saw the same thing I did, it's
yeah,
still nice to see that in writing that other people are having these kinds of experiences.
that's cool. Hey, well, and to wrap up, I guess we're going to talk about ghosts, what types of ghosts, unless you want to just go ahead and,
Oh, well, we can talk briefly because I think we could do a whole
yeah,
segment on this. And let me ask, if anybody has any questions, please just write them in the comments and we will do our best to answer those for you. So
yeah.
do you want to just go over maybe the primary types of
Well,
hauntings?
I was just wanting to point out that, you don't have to have an actual house or building for it to be haunted, that there's places of war that can be haunted outside because, I guess that would be considered a residual haunting, where something keeps happening again and again, or, it's leftover energies of something, maybe some a big event that happened. And also places can be haunted without people having to have died there as well. But
Hmm.
the reason I think that places like this outside could be, maybe hold that energy is because sometimes it could be a place near water. There's like a certain correlation with ghosts and water that we've found. So it seems to be true, that they appear in places where there's water, or in times that the weather, there's rain or fog, more times spirits are seen then. And then also there could be like a type of quartz or some type of mineral there that is holding these memories or whatever, kind of like
Hmm.
releasing them kind of like an echo for whatever
Hmm.
reason. Or maybe it's some kind of moon phase or astrological thing, reason why that you see these. So yeah, that's residual. And then there's also what, an intelligent haunting, where it's like you can kind of communicate with the ghost. So the Bell Witch that we talked about can sort of be like, you know, you're having that intelligent communication with it, it seemed like. And also the poltergeist activity, like you said. And what's another type?
Well, they have something that they call vortex or funnel ghosts that seem to arrive in like either a vortex of energy or they arrive, you will sense their arrival simply because it's cold. Now, that's something that can happen with any ghost because they're taking energy out of the atmosphere. But here's one thing. Of course, there's doppelgangers. Doppelganger is seeing your own. It's like seeing your own ghost, so to speak. And what's really interesting about this is right before the Manson murders, back in the day, Sharon Tate reported having seen herself. She rounded the corner in the house and saw herself a day or two before she was murdered.
Right.
So it often portends your own death. Now, sometimes it doesn't, but normally, because you can always have a trickster type of energy that is pretending, if you will, to maybe give you, trip you up. They think it's funny, but to see an actual doppelganger, it's not something that you might want to see. There's wandering ghosts. These are the ghosts that seem to be lost. They're looking for something. And what's really sad about this type of ghost is you often see it in children because children often are looking for their mothers or their fathers, their family. And so they're lost. And these are the ghosts that would probably be easier to cross over than most because they are looking for something. So they would be willing to do that. Oh, and you know, the famous ghosts, there's hitchhiking ghosts, and the reason,
Yeah.
and these are all ghosts doing different things. Now, the hitchhiking ghosts, there's a famous cemetery in Chicago, outside of Chicago, and supposedly this woman, you know, you'll take her into your car, and by the time you reach the destination, she's always gone. And there's many stories like that across the United States. But this is what I find interesting. You know, we have ectoplasm, which if you've ever seen old-time mediums or photographs of old-time mediums, I'm talking Victorian, you'll often see this stuff coming out of their mouth, which often was just muslin. I mean, it was just like today, people will fake it, right? Fake it, you know, cold readings, hot readings. And just like today, they would do things like that in order to fake it. It was basically, you know, spun muslin, and they'd have it all spitted up, and supposedly it was coming out, and all of this. Now, ectoplasm does exist. You know, I truly do believe that, because often in some legitimate, you know, spirit photography, you may see that. And I always say, especially today with all that we have available to us, it's so easy to fake everything. So, you know, the photograph itself is only as good as the person who takes it. And if and I'm going to give advice to everybody out there who does spirit photography, if you're a paranormal investigator, whatever, if you get a shot that you think is the real deal, you've got ectoplasm showing, you've got a shadow figure, whatever it is, take it to a photographer. Take it to somebody that understands lenses and light, because they can tell you right away if there's a reason for that they can see right away, or something, you know, that you need to be mindful of the next time in order to avoid this kind of photography. One of the clearest cases of this is a photograph that was taken aboard the Queen Mary. And I just laughed out loud because supposedly it was a ghost, you know, and what it was slow shutter speed with somebody walking by. And so
Yeah.
it was somebody in white clothes. So, you know, they looked like it was a ghost walking by, but
That
it
definitely gets some
wasn't.
customers. It gets customers in.
Well, it gets customers in, yes. Oh, Michael. Oh, I love your name, Michael Bouchard. Is that French? I'm going to guess. My dream death would be reckoning with Robert Gray of Pennywise. Yeah, not me so much. I just have a heart attack right there on the spot.
Um,
Anyway, do why don't we stop here and we can continue next time and do
okay.
kind of an in-depth dive.
Sounds good. I think people will like that.
All
I've
right.
enjoyed it. I've had a good time.
Me too. And thanks again to everyone who has been with us,
Yeah.
especially through it all. We appreciate you, because without you, it is a very lonely place. And until next time,
Stay
stay curious.
curious.
We'll get that right one day.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.